Ever feel like you're going through the motions with therapy? Like you're putting in the work, but not really getting where you want to be.
Definitely.
Well, today we're diving deep into the work of Virginie Eymere. She's an advanced conversational hypnosis trainer, and she's got some seriously interesting takes on therapy and hypnosis.
Yeah, she really challenges the traditional views.
Right. Like, are those old ways of doing things really working? Eymere makes you think twice, that's for sure.
For sure.
Yeah.
Before we jump into her approach, though, we should probably get on the same page about some terms, just so everyone listening is following along.
Yeah, good point. Okay, so we've got hypnosis, right? Most people think of like the stereotypical swinging pocket watch, putting someone in a trance, all that.
Exactly. And then there's hypnotherapy, which is using that trance state for therapy.
But then there's also just plain old therapy, no hypnosis involved.
And that's where Imir throws a curveball. You don't actually need hypnosis to do therapy. They're not the same thing at all, even though a lot of people think they are.
Huh. See, I would have thought hypnosis was a key part of therapy, especially if you're dealing with stuff from way back.
Yeah, it's a common misconception. But Imir says traditional hypnosis with its scripts and techniques often misses the root cause. They're stuck on symptoms. Instead, she focuses on what she calls the payoff.
Payoff.
Uh-huh.
Okay, now you've got to explain that. It's like my unconscious mind is getting something out of keeping me stuck or what?
It's more like your unconscious has a reason for holding on to a problem. It's strategic. Think of it this way. Your car's making a weird noise. A mechanic could just try to muffle the sound, right?
Okay, just cover it up.
Right. But a good mechanic will figure out what's causing the noise, the actual mechanical issue. That's the payoff. Fixing that solves the whole problem.
So with therapy, just addressing the symptom is like putting a Band-Aid on a broken bone. You're ignoring the real issue.
Exactly. And that's why some people go to therapy for ages and don't see lasting change. They're stuck dealing with symptoms without ever untangling the root cause, that payoff.
Okay, I'm with you so far. So how do we actually find this payoff? Is that where the hypnosis comes in?
Actually, this is where Imir throws another curveball. She's all about putting therapy first, then maybe hypnosis, good old-fashioned talk therapy.
So ditch the swinging pocket watch and just start talking.
Pretty much. Imir says real change starts with exploring those deeper issues, understanding your own personal payoff, all in a safe, supportive space. Hypnosis might come in later, but it's not the main event.
Interesting. So it's more like if a trance state happens, it happens naturally, led by the client, not forced by the therapist.
Exactly. Imir believes the unconscious mind knows what it needs to heal. Sometimes huge changes can occur without any formal hypnosis. And that's where her idea of untying the knots comes into play.
Ooh, untying the knots. I like that. So much better than just slapping on Band-Aid, right? So how does this untying actually work in therapy? What's the process like?
It's less about a fixed process and more about setting the stage for change, creating the right conditions. And this is where Imir's criticism of those traditional hypnosis techniques comes in.
Okay, so less scripts, more trust in the unconscious. Got it. But what about those times in therapy where it feels like you're just going in circles? How does Eimer's approach actually get you unstuck and create that lasting change?
It's about shifting the focus, less about techniques, more about really connecting. Imir says all those scripts and rigid techniques, even when they seem like a good fit for the client's issue, they can actually make things harder.
Oh, totally. I remember once I tried using a script with a friend who was super stressed, thought I was being helpful, but it totally backfired. She just got more stressed out.
That's exactly the kind of resistance Imir is talking about. Relying too much on scripts, it's like you lose that authentic connection, like trying to force a square peg into a round hole. Doesn't work.
And for the client, it's got to feel invalidating, right? Like their unique experience is just getting shoved into some pre-packaged box.
Exactly. And on the therapist's side, it can create this pressure to perform the technique perfectly
Yeah.
instead of just being present with the client.
Like you're so worried about getting the script right that you forget to actually listen to what the client needs in that moment.
Yeah, like the difference between reading a travel guide and having a conversation with someone who's actually been there.
Yeah.
So how do we escape those scripted loops and find something more genuine? I bet you can guess what Imir would say.
Let me guess. Untying the knots.
Bingo. And she doesn't just throw that phrase around. It's a whole different approach to therapy. Instead of one long session with tons of talking and homework, she's all about mini sessions.
Mini sessions. Okay, now you're speaking my language. I like where this is going. Breaking things down into smaller bites.
Exactly. Think of it like studying for an exam. Cramming everything the night before. Not so effective. spacing out your study sessions. Way better for actually learning. Eymere says having a bunch of these mini sessions within a longer appointment, it lets you keep untying those knots without overwhelming the client.
So you're getting more out of the time you have, right? But it's not just about the amount of time, it's how you use it.
Exactly. With the mini sessions, you're giving the unconscious mind space to actually process and integrate stuff instead of just bombarding it with information and then sending the client home to try and figure it all out on their own.
And that's often what leads to feeling stuck, isn't it? Like you're doing the work but not seeing the results because you're not giving yourself time to digest it all.
You got it. Eymere's all about respecting that natural healing process of the unconscious mind. It's not a race, it's a journey. And sometimes the biggest transformations, they happen when we slow down, listen to ourselves, and create the space for those aha moments to just come naturally.
This is making me rethink a lot about my own experiences in therapy and just with personal growth in general. But it makes you wonder, how do you know if you are stuck in that old symptom-focused model? Like, what are the signs that you're spinning your wheels even though you're putting in the work? That's the million-dollar question, right? How do you know if you're actually making progress or just kind of spinning your wheels?
It's tricky. Everyone's different.
Hmm.
But Eymere has some warning signs you can look out for. Signs that maybe your therapist is too focused on symptoms, not getting to that root cause, that payoff.
Okay, so what should we be watching out for? Lay it on me.
Well, ask yourself, are you talking about the same things over and over again in therapy? Every session, same issues, no real progress.
Oof. Yeah, I've been there. Like, running on that treadmill, going nowhere fast.
Exactly. Another one. Super long sessions. If your therapist is always needing extra time, maybe they're getting lost in the symptoms instead of zeroing in on the root cause.
So longer sessions aren't always better. Maybe I should ask for a discount if we go over time.
Right. It's easy to think more time equals more progress, but that's not always true in therapy. And that actually leads to another warning sign. Too much repetition. Like if you're constantly getting homework, audio recordings, tons of follow-up appointments, maybe question if it's actually addressing that underlying payoff.
Yeah, it's almost like adding more to your to-do list instead of creating space to actually, heal.
That's a great way to put it. And honestly, at the end of the day, the most important thing is your own intuition. How do you feel about the progress you're making? Do you feel heard, understood?
There's that trust thing again, trusting your gut, trusting the process, trusting yourself.
Exactly. If something doesn't feel right, it probably isn't. Don't be afraid to find a therapist who gets you, who's on board with this whole untying the knots thing instead of just putting Band-Aids on stuff.
This has been really eye-opening, honestly. I think what I'm taking away from this is we have way more power in these processes than we think. We're not just passive bystanders. It's our healing, our journey.
I love that. And don't forget, your unconscious mind, it's powerful. Sometimes the biggest changes come when we get out of our own way and just let that wisdom come through.
So instead of searching for the perfect technique or script or whatever, maybe it's about learning to listen to that inner voice. What if that's the key to untying those knots for good?
Now that is a question worth pondering. And on that note, I think it's time to wrap up this deep dive.
To all our listeners out there, as you're on your own journeys of healing and growth, remember, be kind to yourselves, be curious, and trust your gut. You got this.